everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea, podcast by Penang Institute. My name is Pei Jung, and I'm your host for today. So today we are very fortunate to have Dr. Cecilia Chan with us as our guest. Dr. Cecilia Chan, she's a gerontologist who has been involved in the elder care industry for the past 20 years. She is also a researcher, a trainer, and a passionate dementia advocate and activist. She has been involved in various projects concerning providing services and facilities to the Malaysian elderly. Living Beyond Dementia, a local support group for people living with dementia and their carers, is one of her many, many initiatives. Good morning, Dr. Cecilia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me.
So, first off, I think many people may not be familiar with the term gerontologist. Can you maybe explain to our listeners what exactly does a gerontologist do? And what are the qualifications you need to become a gerontologist?
Sure. Unfortunately, it's not very common or popular in Malaysia, so you are right, it's quite foreign here, the term gerontology. It actually derives from Greek. Geron means old people, logy means study. So basically it means the study of old people and aging. So it is a very holistic way of looking at aging, like the ecosystem, the different components that actually support or does the opposite in helping us age together in this world.
So what are the qualifications you need? Like what do you study to become a gerontologist?
So in Malaysia, I think it is, like I said, it's not very common. But gerontology actually is basically you need to get a degree in gerontology, and I think it's available in only very few universities in Malaysia. Basically, it's the study of holistic understanding of aging process, of course the biology and the physical, but also the environment study, the social aspect of it, the political aspect of it, and the environmental aspect of it. So it is a studying of the ecosystem and because aging doesn't exist in a vacuum, it involves all of us. Yeah, so it is a very holistic way of understanding aging.
So is it, you said that it's not very popular or well known in Malaysia. So is it really widely being used right now overseas? See, in other countries, is gerontology more advanced, or what are your thoughts on that?
It is actually quite prevalent in other countries, especially Western countries, even in our neighboring countries like Singapore. Yes, and it has also become very subspecialized. So you can do gerontology, but you can be a social gerontologist or a political gerontologist, or you want to study the environment part of it, or do you want to go into like policymakers part of it? So it has become very diversified and specialized. It is pretty common outside Malaysia.
Well, I think that's quite fascinating because you're right, there are so many aspects and facets of aging. There are so many different areas that aging relates to. So I think it's quite fascinating just now when you said there's even like political gerontology, social, economics. So it's like very specialized area of how do you address aging in different aspects and pillars. Very interesting. So I just want to ask, does a gerontologist or does yourself, do you work hand in hand with a geriatrician, or you don't come across each other very often?
In my particular area, definitely not only geriatricians, but because you don't do it silo, it's impossible to address aging issues by yourself, stand alone. So I work very closely with the medical communities, including the geriatricians, because they are part of it, but also nurses, physiotherapists, speech therapists, all the medical communities.
All the health professionals.
Yeah, but also outside health communities, like I'm now working very closely with creative artists, musicians, and etc. And these are the components that in Malaysia, it's very rare that we include them in addressing the aging challenges in Malaysia.
So I have to ask, what initially drew you to the field of gerontology? So what is it about it that interests you and you took so much effort and passion into studying the field and advocating for the elderly?
Yeah, it's interesting. But my interest actually started when I was a little girl, very young, and I was very attached to my grandmothers and my grand aunties, So I think as a child, they fascinated me a lot. I would rather listen to them tell their stories rather than watching a TV, at a very young age. But as I grew up, I realized that the one thing that is equates all of us as human beings, no matter what gender, no matter what walks of life or social status, we all will all grow old, and it's something very powerful that will unite all of us. And so I think that is something that we all have in common, human beings. So I grew very attracted to it and try to understand, what aging means and what wisdom it brings and how we can support, especially now as we are in the process of growing into an aged nation.
So can we talk about some of the biggest challenges facing the aging population today, especially the challenges that you come across in your work?
Yeah, I think in Malaysia, we are really very ill prepared in preparing us to be an aged nation. Even though we are an aging nation now, 7% of our population are elderly. Look around us, our facilities, our structures, our support system and all that, we are not equipped, we are not built to fit into the elderly population, I think we are very, that is worldwide, where we are very youth-centric. We are hoping to maintain our youth as much as possible, and our design and all that are geared towards the younger population. So we are not really prepared as a nation, as a society, to support the aging Malaysians, and I think that is the crux of it.
So what are the things that you think the government should do, or how should we be prepared to become an aging nation gracefully? Or maybe we can talk about some of the examples of what other countries have been doing successfully that you think Malaysia actually can adopt.
Yeah, I think if you look very closely, just our neighboring countries, the two countries that are super aged, that is Singapore and Japan, and see their policies and learn from them, I think that would kind of give us a shorter cut, so that we can eliminate the mistakes that they have done, and learn from them, and also kind of adopt to our culture, because as a country, even though we share a lot of similarities with Singapore, we are very unique as a Malaysian, and we have very unique Malaysian cultures. So definitely we can't just copy and paste, but at least we can study what they have done as a society, what the government have done, and analyze it and see, which parts of it that we think can best fit, and kind of adjust it accordingly to fit. Yeah, we have been talking about this for eons. I remember, reading about it time and again, but we have just been talking, and unfortunately, we have not seen any evident, strong actions that have been taken by the government, policymakers, and all of us to address the aging issues seriously. And I think we have not been taking it seriously enough.
But I think Japan is different in the sense that they have been prepared from decades ago. They have already been prepared to face the aging population. So I think that's why they are so prepared, and that's why I think. Do you feel that Malaysia is caught off guard by basically? Do we not expect ourselves to arrive at an aging nation so soon? Is that one of the reasons why we are so unprepared?
I think that we have been talking about it for a while. I mean, for 20 years I have been seeing us talking about developing policies. We have been talking about, developing acts and rules and regulations and etc. But there's no follow-up. So I think we sort of have an idea that we don't have much time left to prepare ourselves. But I think the thing is that we do not take it seriously enough, to see the impact it will have on us as a nation. I think that's how I feel.
Yeah, I do agree with you as well, because sometimes when we think about it, the conversation always revolves around youth, employment, labor, all of that. But somehow older people are at the crux of the conversation. It's kind of like an afterthought sometimes. I feel like, oh yeah, we need to remember this group as well. So I do think that it is very important that we keep the senior citizens in the conversation going forward and to think about their needs, I would say, especially in terms of accessibility to public spaces and all of that. Okay, now I really want to focus a bit on your work as a dementia advocate. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yes. In the past few years, especially during the pandemic, when we experienced the lockdown nationwide, I received a lot of calls, a lot of SOS from the family of people living with dementia, and also from those who are experiencing cognitive changes. Maybe they themselves are going through the process of having dementia themselves. And I see the challenges that they are facing, and they do not have much support and also services, especially during the pandemic. And those who are in facilities like nursing homes are not allowed to come out. We are not allowed to visit them.
Yes. Yeah.
So it gives rise to a lot of issues, and I think it is global, but we do not know about it because it's pretty hidden. And people living with dementia, because of the nature of dementia itself, are most of the time pretty voiceless. So then it dawned upon me that, we forgot about them, we forgot about those living with dementia. And because they do not have opportunity to go out and receive support, and people are not allowed to go there, they decline very sharply, especially during the lockdown. And they also in a difficult position to go and receive especially medical help, because our emphasis at that time were on COVID-19, right?
Yes.
So this is not is considered not an acute need at that time. So then I realized that there is a huge need, and nobody is there to support them. So we decided to then start an online community to support family members and also those living with dementia. We meet once a week. We talk about challenges. We give ideas and support system, and just a place where they can voice out their issues, share their experiences, and support each other. That is where it really, really got started, was during the pandemic.
That must have been a very tough time for the dementia patients and their carers. Especially dementia patients probably are not able to verbalize what they need as well. So eventually, how does medical help or support get to them? Is your group part of that support system that tries to help them to get the physical needs, physical support and medical help that they need?
Yeah, so we become the voice of the voiceless. So we became the advocate. So it is through our then networking and all that, then we were able to kind of plan on how do we meet the specific needs of the individuals depending on their needs and all that, how we can go about to address the issues during the pandemic.
So can we talk about maybe some of the biggest challenges faced by dementia patients and their carers? So what are their daily struggles? What's most difficult for them? And how can maybe us as a community help to elevate some of their suffering and their challenges?
I would say the biggest, very obvious issue that we face in Malaysia is stigma. And the stigma, it's really big. And the stigma sort of paralyzes us and from doing anything positive. And one of the important components of the stigma is a lot of Malaysians, even though they may feel or they may suspect that they may have some symptoms of cognitive impairments, they do not seek treatment. They do not go and get diagnosis. They don't want the diagnosis of dementia because it just gives you a label. And once you have that label, the society treats you very differently. And what triggered me was the story of my friend he was a dancer, and he loves dancing, and he started line dancing in Ipoh, and he trained a lot of dancing instructors in Ipoh. So that was his passion after retirement from being a teacher. So one day he felt that, he was going through some changes, and he went to see his doctor, and he went to get evaluation and all that. So when he was diagnosed to have Alzheimer's, he was doing okay, but when he was diagnosed with having Alzheimer's, the next day he stopped his classes, he stopped dancing, he stopped teaching, the very next day. And I was like very surprised and also very curious. So I asked him, what made you change your mind? I was afraid that, perhaps he was afraid that he was going to fall, or was it his balance? And his answer really shattered me. He said, Cecilia, I stopped dancing because I'm afraid I will not be able to dance according to what society expect of me. I will not be able to dance the way they want me to dance. So I realized that we are actually very powerful as a society. So this is what I mean by stigma. It's so powerful that it kind of paralyze us from doing a lot of things as a society and also as an individual.
On the line of stigma, I just want to ask, what are some of the common misconceptions about dementia that you have faced in your work? So you have the dementia patient themselves, but how other people look at them? What are the misconceptions that other people have when it comes to facing people with dementia?
So when I use the word dementia, automatically some thoughts or ideas, perception will come to your brain. You will definitely think of something. So the stigma is usually when the word dementia is being mentioned, we always think of the worst, the person. And it's not because we are bad people. It's because of the social conditioning, and the structuring of the word and all that. We have been exposed to all this conditioning that make us believe that dementia equals to person not being there anymore. If the person cannot do things anymore, they are like zombies, and we use all these negative words, and therefore we focus is a lot on loss. What a person would, the disability and the loss that constitute dementia. So we look purely from a very medical lens that is based on disabilities, rather than looking at the person on what the person still is, what the person is trying to communicate to us using whatever that is left of their functioning brain. But I think the biggest stigma is the negative and negativity and the disability and the loss.
What about the carers and the loved ones? So kind of like, what are the challenges that they will face if your loved one has dementia? Then the carer and the family, how can they adapt to it?
Yeah, that's why stigma is really huge now. It not only affects the people living with dementia, it also affect the family members and the care partners and the supporters, the medical community, and all of us. That's why I feel that it's very paralyzing. So even people, the family members, spouses, care partners would also face the stigma. So people will not then involve them anymore because your mother is this, then I will not invite you to my social functions and all that.
And sometimes because they themselves have to reject the invitation, then it becomes like, if I ask her out also she can't make it, so might as well not ask, right?
Yes, so it perpetuates, so it's like a vicious cycle. And they themselves as maybe daughters would not want to bring their mothers because they feel that their mother may embarrass them if they behave in a way that is not according to social norms, and if they don't conform to the our ways and normal, according to our normal ways of social norms, then they will be very embarrassed. So they themselves sometimes would avoid bringing their loved ones to public functions or even to restaurants or public spaces. They will keep them home, So that is what we call social isolation, and that is actually it makes it worse. It makes the people living with dementia worse. Worsens the situation.
Yeah. Because isolation will do that. I was about to ask you whether would bringing them out to the society to participate in the community will make it better, but you just answered the question for me, so very good. So talking about advocacy for dementia awareness, basically my question would be, how do you run your advocacy work? Like, what do you do to raise awareness about dementia?
So I try to use multi-dimensional. I realized after 20 years that the old familiar way of doing it, like during conferences and medical seminars, doesn't really work because the message doesn't get across. So I'm using different ways and involving different people, very much like going to the community, and like what I'm doing now using the podcast. I've also get involved with dementia communities that from other countries and who are very supportive of me, and also using other channels, like we did one at Hinbus that is drawing a different group of crowds. So we go to the rural areas, to the communities to have activities, to give talks. We give talks and activities to the very young ones so that we can educate it from a young age and all that. So we're using multi-level and multi-dimensional so that we hope that it will reach out to more people in Malaysia.
So I guess the important thing is changing the culture of the stigma surrounding dementia, and you're doing that by reaching out to the community and talking to people. And I think it's especially important, as you said just now, that the young people are actually aware of this as well, because, well, young people will grow old as well, and also young people will need to know how to face it if and when their parents or loved ones eventually encounter this. I also want to talk about some of the special projects that you have undertaken in your advocacy work. So I read about the Forgotten Mutiara Cafe, which I'm actually quite fascinated by. Can we talk a little bit about that? How did that idea come to you, and how does the cafe work?
Oh yes, I'm also very proud and excited about that project. The idea was born from my involvement with my colleagues from Japan. So we have been working with them for the past 3 years, and I visited them last year I spent a month there visiting their facilities and understanding their models. And I think this is quite viral. You've heard about the restaurant of mistaken orders.
Yes.
Yeah, so that has gone viral, and I quite like the idea. It's very simple, but it is very impactful. So I kind of borrowed that idea to Malaysia and I twisted it a bit. So we call it the Forgotten Mutiara. And I use that word mutiara because it's very symbolic of how we view dementia in Malaysia. We always look at the very ugly, very unattractive, yucky shell of the pearl, and often we forgot the gem that is hidden inside which is the pearl, which is the mutiara. So I want to maintain our Malaysian word, so I use the word mutiara, and hence we always forgot the mutiara. So the word was born, the Forgotten Mutiara Cafe. So actually it is a pop-up cafe that we turn the elder care center into a cafe for that day, made our own delicacies, because our persons living with dementia are very talented. They were housewives, they were barista in a kopitiam, they were chefs and all that. So they have a lot of skills that is we often ignore, or we often don't tap into it, but that gives them meaning, that gives them pleasure, that gives them a sense of purpose of being a person, not just sit down there and stare at the wall the whole day, but they got something to fulfill, So that day we turned it, and they were the chefs, we were the assistants. So it was the crew consists of staff, volunteers, and those living with dementia coming together to turn it into a cafe. And we prepare our delicacies and all that from scratch, including our teh tarik and kopi tarik and all that from scratch. And then we serve our guests. We also, after that, have activities that connects us, like dancing, our Malaysian folk songs. Then that's what, after that, where we kind of laugh together, we sang together, we danced together, we just be together as human beings. And we also cried together because the energy and the love that was shared was very powerful, and we got so connected. So that the idea and the message is to create an all-inclusive society, that everybody can be a part of it, no matter their cognitive abilities, no matter their physical abilities. We are one community of human beings. Let's just come together and support each other within our community. So the message is to create an all-inclusive community.
That's a very, very powerful message. So with the Forgotten Mutiara Cafe, how many pop-ups have you organized so far?
That was on our first one. That was on Valentine's Day. So we are having another one soon. That will be on the 29th of May. And that will be in conjunction of honoring and celebrating our parents. So celebrating Parents' Day will be our second pop-up.
Is it something that's open to public, or it's for the the home and their family?
It is for guests, but they need to register with us because of space constraint. So we are open to the public, but they need to register with us first. Yeah.
So going back to what you said about the people with dementia basically also doing the cooking and all the preparing and everything. So in terms, because there's always maybe a misconception or maybe a wrong thinking that when we talk about people with dementia, we think about them losing their memories, right? And sort of like not knowing where they are at certain points of life, but they are still able to remember their skills?
Yeah, so dementia is actually very complicated and very complex. Yeah, and also there are many types of dementia. But, so what we are trying to focus on is the person. So we're looking at some of our clients are still they're still very skilled. They need support, meaning that they may forget that they have added the sugar and they may add it again, or maybe they will not be able to continue the process of, preparing a meal. So they may need some kind of support. But when we support them positively, they will then feel a sense of well-being, a sense of purpose. So it really depends on the individual, and the stage and of the dementia they're in. But I believe, we do not categorize people living with dementia at my center. And we have, as long as you can get up from the bed, you can move on a wheelchair or a assisted device, you're more than welcome to come. So we have, even in our Forgotten Mutiara, people who are on wheelchair and using a walking frame and all that, being a part of the community. Even though if they cannot prepare food, there's always something that they can do. They can be involved in the music making, in dance, in part of the activity, just being a part of human beings.
So another conception about dementia and Alzheimer's is that people think that they will never get better, they will only get worse. Is that true?
It is a progressive condition, meaning that it would not get well. And until now, we have been trying very hard, but there is no cure for it. But I think it's essential that we focus on what we can do.
Yes, of course.
That is on care and how we can support them to live the best of their lives wherever they are.
So what are some of your other programs in your advocacy work? So earlier on, you talk about engaging artists, musicians, and I remember in our initial first meeting, you were talking a bit about that with me as well, about using crafts and I think puzzles you mentioned. So can we maybe talk a bit about that aspect of your advocacy work?
Yes, and I think that is, I call it creative care.
Yes, that was the term that I was trying to find.
So it is the part of us that do not have to use cognitive skills. We don't have to rely so much about memory. We don't have to rely so much about our ability to count, our ability to recognize certain process and doing it properly. Creative care is allowing us to be just the way we are wherever we are. So we can express ourselves as a human being, whatever emotions, even we don't have to remember even words, So these are the way that we can still connect with them, we can still engage them, is by using creative ways that our brain it still can use pretty much towards the end of the dementia.
I just want to hear from you, do you have a special or inspiring or unforgettable story to share from your work with dementia patients?
Oh yes, there are so many.
You can share two.
I'll share one because I think it's very impactful, and this is the Kisah Benar of the story that we have turned it from a tragedy into something very beautiful and significant. And I hope that this story will inspire all of us to do better. I think we can do better. So this is a story about a person living with dementia. I call him Cikgu because he is a cikgu, he's a retired teacher, and he was working in Kampa, and he retired as a teacher, but he's very, very active, so he's an athlete. He was involved in the hash clubs, he runs, he joins marathons, he hikes the hills twice a day, so it's very active lifestyle, and he lives by himself all along, And one day he was found to be lost. And, he went hiking and he couldn't find his way back to his house. So people would notice him and brought him back. And his neighbors also kind of realized that there's some changes in him. He got a bit lost. He couldn't find his food and not eating well. So they contacted his family members. But they are not in Malaysia. You see, the daughter is overseas. So then they contacted me. Oh, yeah. And then what happened was the daughter brought him to overseas to have an evaluation and all that. So he was diagnosed to have Alzheimer's type of dementia. And then when he came back to Malaysia, they realized that it was not suitable for him to live by himself. So they arranged for him to stay in a facility in Penang Island. Unfortunately, most of us do not know how to handle dementia cases and people living with dementia. So you can imagine this particular person who has been so independent all his life, financially, socially, physically. And physically he's well. I mean, he's able. And suddenly, overnight he was brought to a facility where he is stripped of all his personhood. Yeah. He's not independent. He's told what to do, what time to wake up, who to sleep with,
what time to eat.
Yes. So everything is being structured. That's not him, And in Malaysia, when we talk about dementia facility, our idea of safety is to lock them down, So the unit is a lockdown unit. Unfortunately, it feels like a very nice looking prison to him. He doesn't understand why he cannot go out. Why is it that he can't go home? So he can become very distressed. And the operator do not know how to address that. But to me, it's obvious, if you put you and I in a place and then lock us up suddenly, we would be very distressed too, to be in a foreign place and being told what to do. And to him, in his mind, is that he didn't do any crime. He didn't do anything wrong. Why wasn't put in a prison for, he didn't commit anything. So he couldn't understand. So he became very distressed. And that becomes like a vicious cycle. The more he's distressed, the more they restrain him. So now from being in a building, he's being restrained in a room by himself. And there was a time, it was very sad, that the only time he could connect with the world was through his iPad. The family brought him an iPad and he could connect with his daughter through iPad. So they had video calls and they could sing, and he loves singing and dancing. He loves the Beatles and Elvis. And each time when they finished the conversation, he would then look for his daughter and he want to go out. I want to go out. I want to go home. Understandable. Even I would do that. Of course. But then what happens was the operator confiscate that iPad from him. So now he's got nothing left. There's nothing for him to connect. So he is just in a room all day and night. Food were brought to him and all. He refused to eat because, I would understand if you lock me up and you hold me a prisoner, would you then also poison my food? I would suspect that you will poison my food.
You will play with your mind that way.
Right? Yeah. You have no connection with the world. You don't allow me to talk to my daughter or my family. And now you're giving me food. I'll be very suspicious. Are you trying to poison me? So that happens, and then so they thought that he became aggressive, but I think what he was doing is just fighting for his life. And then because of his behavior, they actually admitted him to a acute psychiatric unit in a hospital. And he was warded for a couple of months, and he was tried on all antipsychotic drugs. And that is when the family members contacted me, they need help. And I was telling them that I can't possibly go to another facility and tell people what to do and how to run it. The only way I can help is they could arrange for him to come to my center, my daycare center, where I could assess him and I could then do a care plan for him, but I have to see him first so that I know him. So when he did come, we arranged for a Grab to bring him here, and I remember the operator were like texting me and they were warning him, he's very violent, he's very aggressive, Cecilia, you better be careful, you better be sure to tie him down in case he spit at you or kick you. And I was like, I feel it's very strange that a person would just see me for no reason and behave aggressively towards me, unless I trigger it. So when he first came, I waited for him. When he entered, the first thing I was to greet him, "Selamat pagi, Cikgu." And I remembered he gave me this beautiful smile, and he addressed me back, "Selamat pagi," and I asked him, "Cikgu, sila masuk," And that was because I honor him as a person, and because he's always been a teacher. And I talked to him. He's a Chinese person, but I still do speak with him in Bahasa Malaysia because that's his choice as a teacher. And in the Sekolah Menengah, he uses Bahasa Malaysia most of the time. So we communicate in his language. So when he came, knowing him, he loves music. So I kind of used his music that he likes. We then could communicate. Only when I know that we are able to connect as a human being, me and him, do I begin to then start planning my care plan for him. And to fast forward it, he has now even recently, last week he went and had a reunion with his friends, and the family and friends commented, wow, he has changed so much. He's more relaxed. He's not as agitated. He's not as anxious. He used to be like every 5 minutes, the family, they're not bringing up because when you enter a place, he wants to go home or he wants to go to the toilet and he wants to go to the toilet every 5 minutes, And that's because he's very anxious. Here, people don't correct him. We don't shout at him. We don't tell him what to do, not to do. We don't boss him around. Here, he is the boss because he's the teacher. And because he's a Cantonese, and we don't speak Cantonese, so we asked him, Cikgu boleh tak Cikgu ajar us, teach us Cantonese, and so he did. So then the role changed where he became the teacher and we become the murid. We become his students, So he was very at ease of playing the role of a teacher, and that reinforces his sense of well-being because his sense of purpose. He comes to us now 3 times a week, and that has transformed him a lot, And he is now, his antipsychotic medications are all stopped. He's no more on any antipsychotic. He is more relaxed. He can joke with us. He can connect with us. And even some of his cognitive abilities, because we assess him very often, some of his cognitive, has actually improved. And I could understand because like you and I, if you're very stressed, we'll not be able to perform very well in our exam. But if you are relaxed, if we have enough sleep and all that, we will, we will do better in our exam. So it works the same manner. So this is a story that I hope will inspire a lot of us. When we do better, as a person, they also do better.
I think that's a wonderful story. And as I was listening to you, I can't help but compare the way that different people treat him. So you see him as a person, as a human being, and you really tried your best to connect with him, while the other party sees him as a patient. So
with dementia.
I think it's kind of like, it really, from your story, the lack of care was very obvious from the first care facility, and then going on to how you really try your best to connect with him, like even, Cikgu and Murid, and he revels with being a Cikgu, and you really help to give him that confidence of being a teacher and a mentor again. So I think that's a really wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I hope this will inspire people to look at people living with dementia differently as well, and to look at them as a person, to treat them as a person, to create that real connection instead of seeing them as, okay, ini orang sakit, yeah, so, let's not do anything to agitate them or whatsoever. Thank you for sharing. So as a final question, I want to ask you, what do you hope to see for the field of gerontology in the future, or even just specifically for dementia care in the future? What are your hopes?
I have a lot, but I think the basic one is that we focus on what we can do as an individual and also collectively as a society, and recognize our own power, that we can actually be very impactful in supporting a person, living with dementia, to continue to live their life to the fullest. We can actually make or break their lives. So I think as a society, as a community, at our level, wherever we are, if we can create a society that a person, no matter, what cognitive stage or physical ability that they're in, they can continue to be a part of us, to be a part of our society, in our religious community, in our recreational community, wherever we are, if we can create an environment that's safe for them to continue to be a part of us, I think we can start that almost immediately without hoping the policymakers or the governments to do something. We can start it ourselves by creating the difference within us and within our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Cecilia. I think that's a very powerful and inspiring message to end. So thank you once again for joining us today. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.